We're here today with Dr. Clifford Humphreys of Thales College. He's the director of admissions, and we're just thrilled to have all of you with us and have him here today to talk about the potential future of Thales College and classical education and the liberal arts degrees and what that can offer, what the scope of that can offer. So I'm gonna give you a little bio on Dr. Humphreys. He's originally from Warm Springs, Georgia. His father worked at Larry Burkett's Christian Financial Ministries, and his mother homeschooled his two brothers and him. He attended Palm Beach Atlantic University and spent some time commercial fishing in Alaska and some time learning the trade of woodworking in New York City. He ended up in graduate school first at University of Dallas and finally at Hillsdale College, where he received his PhD in politics in the spring of 2020. While in the academic job hunt, he grew discouraged by the direction in which higher education in general seemed to be heading, both ideologically and financially. And when he was drawn to Thales College, by its determination to both be an institution that teaches the liberal arts as a genuine search for the truth while helping students prepare for a professional life in a way that does not saddle them with the enormous debt in the process. He joined Thales College in September, and he and his wife live in Wake Forest. Welcome, 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 Dr. Clifford Humphreys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we have a couple of questions that we would like some answers for Thales, and would like to hear what your responses are. One of the things that you mentioned was that Thales is a cohort style class. Can you tell us more about what that looks like and how do cohorts work?
Yeah, it's funny. So this is actually a great discussion to have among people who are interested in classical education, who are interested in rediscovering something old that has kind of been changed. And the cohort system is exactly that. That used to be what all colleges were. All colleges had a curriculum, and every student would come in and take the same classes together, and they would experience the same authors. They would be able to have conversations based upon the same discussions they had in class. And I just spent the whole month of March at Monticello doing a research fellowship, and I got to study a little bit about Thomas Jefferson and the University of Virginia. And the University of Virginia, believe it or not, was the very first school in America to invent this new way of doing college. And that was known as the elective system. And now that is what is just across the board. That's generally what everybody gets. So when we think of college, we think of the elective system, and the cohort system is almost completely gone, and it's foreign to us. There are a few schools or colleges that still do that, and they have a unique identity because of that. St. John's College is one. Thomas Aquinas College in California is another one, but there are very few, and it's something that's kind of been lost. So it's something we're trying to rediscover at Thales College, but we're also trying to figure out. We're not trying to mindlessly just go back to the past. We're trying to say, look, there was a lot that was good about that old model. What about it should we go back to and save? And what do we need to recognize is different about the 21st century that requires us to maybe innovate a little bit? So we want to do that carefully. So at Thales College, we're trying to go back to that spirit of having all students come and take the bulk of their classes together, so that they can have the same experience, and they're able to continue conversations that they start in the classroom outside of the classroom. And that also creates continuity among alumni. So they all know they've had a similar experience. If you think about the common university experience today, it's very hard to imagine that if you met someone who graduated at a different time from you, perhaps from the same large university, you wouldn't assume that you had a similar experience. You might say, well, I went to the football games and you went to the football games, and that was the familiar common thread. But as far as the education and curriculum goes, it's a hodgepodge. It's a buffet. You choose what you want. No one has a sort of set menu, as it were, as far as the curriculum goes. So at Thales, like I said, we're trying to recover something good from the past, and also, without doing that mindlessly, think about how we can innovate on that principle today. So for us, our cohort system is seen largely in our liberal arts degree, where students are coming and they're taking a lot of the same classes that are humanities or liberal arts based. And then they differ when they pick their professional track. Now, we only have 2 professional degrees right now. We might expand that a little bit, but we don't want to expand it a lot. We want to keep our choices for professional degrees very few. And so right now we have mechanical engineering and entrepreneurial business. And so students, when they pick a track, they will differ from the cohort system in that regard. They will start taking particular classes that go with their track. But those will be the exception. Most of their classes they will take together. So anyway, that's the cohort system 2.0, you might say.
That fits in real well with a lot of the Scholé group models that we hear, in that they try to really um, design their studies so that all of the students in that community can share in that same conversation. So I love that. So that would be a great fit for a lot of our Scholé groups. They would be familiar with that style of learning on some level,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that's a good point.
They just may not have known it was cohorts. Right.
Right, right, right.
So we've heard about the Oxford style of teaching. We've heard those words and that terminology. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like in real life and in
Yeah, sure. Here again, I think it's helpful to think about the distinction. So before I was talking about the distinction between a cohort system and an elective system. Here, it's helpful to think about the Oxford, or this is really the UK style, compared to the course curriculum that style that we have in America. So as most of us know who've been to college in America, you go to school and you take lots of various classes and you have lots of various professors, and that's the college experience. In England, as some people know who have studied C.S. Lewis and that kind of thing, it's a very different approach. They don't take courses in the same way that we think of them now. There are sort of lectures that are offered from time to time, and students are paired with a single tutor. And that tutor will give them assignments and will, in a way, sort of tailor the education to that particular student, given what they want to study. And often they will go to very few lectures and very few classes, and they will just be spending their entire time engaged in a long research project to produce a thesis at the end. And of course, there are pros and cons to both of these systems. And again, at Thales, we're trying to say, instead of having to choose one, let's think about this and how can we use both of them and pull out the good things from each system. So we do have courses like American style that students will take, but we also recognize the benefit of having that one-on-one connection, that's sort of a mentor-mentee thing. And because our model at Thales College is to be very small by design, that allows us to be able to maximize a relationship between a mentor and a mentee. And the way that really, I think is helpful to understand is often with classes, some of my favorite classes, whether it's literature or philosophy, for example, it can get really abstract. And personally, I enjoy abstract thinking and theoretical thinking. But what the Oxford tutorial model allows is it allows the professor to help bring the concepts that you're talking about in class down to earth, down right into the student's life and experience. And what does that abstract concept mean given your particular life, your background, where you want to go with your future, what's going on in your life right now? And so it's a way of really trying to just squeeze the juice, as it were, out of the concepts that we're talking about in class. Otherwise, it can just be an exercise in learning some theory, putting it down on paper and checking out, and that's the end of it. So what we're really trying to emphasize is the practical nature of this. In fact, it might be helpful for me to explain our name. So Thales College is named for a guy named Thales of Miletus, who was the very first philosopher, according to the ancient philosopher biographer, an ancient biographer of philosophers. And Thales was a unique guy. He's you might say his most important attribute is that he was interested in making philosophy useful in a couple different ways. Now, he also came up with mathematical theorems that we still use today. And so he was abstract in a lot of ways, but he was also interested in applying philosophy to life. And so our founder Bob Luddy chose Thales because that's something he's really interested in. He recognizes the benefit of philosophy. In fact, Thales is the one who coined that term "know thyself," which often gets attributed to Socrates, but actually that was Thales. And that's sort of the beginning of philosophy, right? Understanding your human nature and being able to derive truths about humanity from our own experience. So that's Thales. And so in the spirit of Thales of Miletus, we're trying to make everything practical without sacrificing the higher things like truth and goodness and beauty, which may not necessarily have some immediate practical application, but that still ought to have a real effect in our lives. And we can get that if we do things like the tutorial model, where professors and students are able to meet together one-on-one and to have those conversations that really bring the education down to earth and right down to the students' actual life.
So would you say from like a pedagogical standpoint that that Oxford model really comes from the style of learning that originated with Thales in Greece and what they would practice? Is that something that you would maybe?
I would liken it really to an ancient model. When we think about the word teacher, think about in the New Testament, the way that the disciples referred to Jesus was a rabbi, teacher. And we think of it now as sort of capital T, teacher. I myself have had many professors in my life, but when I think about the teachers that I had, the few that had the real impact on my life, they stand out. And so if you think about Plato, perhaps in his academy, having a few students around, you see this in his dramatizations of Socrates and the dialogues. It's always Socrates with one, two, or three, or a few group of people that are getting together and having these conversations. The same with Christ and his disciples. So it's just an ancient model. I think that when you compare that with the large lecture hall with a lectern at the front and a professor pontificating to a group of people that he's not interacting with, it's quite a different thing. So we're trying to, in a way, yes, get back to that older pedagogy of really using conversation, which is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. So that's what we're trying to get back to.
Dr. Humphrey, do you therefore anticipate partnering or pairing a one-on-one student to mentor relationship, or just in these sort of smaller groupings of students?
Yes, right. Good question. Both. So our student to teacher ratio at the maximum level that we envision for the college will be 15-1. So at the maximum size of the college, when students and teachers together, it's 15-1. But students will be meeting basically every other week with their professors one-on-one. To get that sort of holistic, down to earth attention, and that like I said, capital T teacher sort of style of teaching. So it's going to include both, and we think that both of those are really important.
Yeah.
That's great. And I think we kind of covered this, but from the standpoint of homeschooling. So if you have a homeschooling mother or Scholé group or director that wants to impart this style of pedagogy in their classroom or in their home, what would you suggest? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer it in a rather odd way, perhaps. My dissertation advisor was always very critical of me with my writing, and always wanted my writing to improve. And I remember one comment he made. I was writing about raising children in some capacity, and he noted in big bold letters on the top, "You raise chickens, you rear children." And so he's led me to sort of contemplate that distinction a lot. And I think being homeschooled myself and having interacted with a lot of homeschoolers, I think that the homeschooling community especially appreciates the particular awesome task of rearing children. And I think that what we see ourselves at Thales College as trying to take what has been begun already in homeschooling efforts, which is immense, and the sacrifices are immense, and trying to build on that. So your question, how can homeschooling parents help prepare their students and help encourage them into adulthood where they're in a good position to be able to thrive in a place like Thales College? Yeah, I have a couple tips. One is, I think it's really important, and that parents instill in their children an understanding of and an appreciation for the distinction between liberty and license. And that's a concept that's just lost on our generation right now. We don't really know the difference in a lot of cases, or we try to err on the side of saying, well, let the child decide, what it wants to do. And that's not helpful, because in a condition of license, liberty is destroyed. And that means that a student's not able to really thrive in a place of liberty. And we see that in the most tragic cases where students have their liberty taken away from them because they've lived dissolute lives, and they end up in situations where they have very little liberty. So if a student has been reared in such a way as to know and appreciate what liberty really is, which is different from license, then I think that they're set up well to appreciate what we're offering at Thales College. And what's unique about Thales College, I think, in contrast to what a lot of schools offer, and not every school, but I'll say a lot of schools, is you'll look at the marketing and the way they try and appeal to students. They offer them an experience that's filled with liberty, all the liberty of an adult, which they haven't been able to enjoy, with none of the responsibility. Lots of liberty, no responsibility, and that is an equation for infantilization. It is the opposite of maturing and encouraging students to mature. It encourages them to do the opposite. And so at Thales College, we recognize that, and we think that what we ought to do instead is offer students together liberty with responsibility. And so a student who has been reared to understand that difference and appreciate that is going to thrive at Thales College. We want to take a student who's been prepped and primed in that kind of environment and is ready to start leading a life of independence away from their family that they've been dependent on their whole lives before. And so that's kind of our idea. It's a really important concept, and I use the word awesome, and it is an incredible task. My wife and I are pregnant now with our first child, and so I'm starting to think more about parenting and it's just daunting to think about how difficult that is. But by God's grace, it is possible. And with more institutions like Scholé and Thales, it's becoming easier and easier to do. I hope so.
That sounds great. What things that do you do at Thales to help encourage students to enter that adulthood phase and to accept that responsibility of that liberty that you're talking about, as opposed to not? Like, what are some things that y'all have in place just to remind them, those reminders?
Yeah. Several things that are kind of built into the structure. So Thales College, we don't participate in the federal student loan program. So students, we are helping students not make bad decisions when it comes to student loans. We want to encourage them instead to help pay for their own education as they go on and make the transition from being dependent in their families to being independent adults, to make that a gradual one. And so we know that they're going to have to rely on help from their parents. We don't have dorms at Thales College. So students may have to be living at home or living with a family member, or they may get together and we'll help arrange roommates, and they'll get apartments together and that kind of a thing. But think about that. That is a pretty big step. And as opposed to, imagine that, compare that with the idea of a dormitory, the way it's become now, which is a giant, it's basically camp all the time. And students don't have to take responsibility. They usually, oftentimes will sort of trash the place because it's not theirs. They don't have to take responsibility for it. And so that's built into the structure, is that we're encouraging students to step into adulthood, and we give them maximum choice. A lot of schools require students their first year to live in dorms, to have meal plans. And that's because the only way they can guarantee companies that are going to offer things like a cafeteria is if they can guarantee they'll have X many people participating in that program throughout the year. And so I understand how that works, but it also limits the choice that students have. So what we're trying to do is maximize the choices that they can make that will fit their particular situation the best. Another thing that we do is we insist on students having internships. This is something that, and they're all paid. They're all paid internships, and these are going to be with companies that we will have built relationships with, and will have agreed to accept applications from our students. So starting in their second year, students will be interning, and that's the sort of on-the-job training that they're able to get. But think about it, they're not just earning a paycheck, they're not just getting job experience, they're learning important concepts like showing up on time, dressing well, comporting themselves in an adult-like manner. So that's another way we're encouraging students and beckoning them into adulthood. I'm trying to think of some other things. The Oxford tutorial model is one where students, when they're meeting one-on-one with an adult, they have to learn how to talk to an adult. If they've only been around children their whole lives, it's a different experience. So those are a couple things that right off the bat, stuff that's built into the structure. And then like the not having dormitories and cafeterias. But then other things like the internship program, I think are really key for helping students mature and make that transition into adulthood.
When you mentioned about making the responsible choices and giving your students the ability to choose those liberties, and not participating in the irresponsible nature, I suppose, with receiving sort of federal funding, or how do you explain to parents about your also the choice not to pursue accreditation, and
Yeah,
how have you overcome sort of those parental fears, or what's the response
right,
you're
right.
receiving?
Yeah, great question. This isn't always the case, but it's often been the case in my experience that people don't know the difference between accreditation and licensing.
Mhm.
They conflate those things. So in their minds, accreditation it means legitimacy, and if you're not accredited, you're not really legitimate. So the difference is we as a college, and any college in most states, I think probably all of them, I know in North Carolina for sure, if you want to operate as a college or university, you have to be approved and licensed by the North Carolina Board of Governors, and they approve every degree program that you offer. So they've looked at our liberal arts program, they've looked at our entrepreneurial business program, and they're looking at our engineering program right now, and they have to evaluate it, and if they don't license it, we can't offer it. So we are legitimate in that sense. Sorry, phone's going off here. We are legitimate. Accreditation, the reason that everyone kind of assumes that you have to be accredited now is because accreditation is required if you are going to participate in the federal student loan program. And basically everyone is. And so that's why every school is also participates in accreditation. Accreditation is a voluntary process. You don't have to participate in it. And it's a third party organization that evaluates your program. And in an ideal situation, that's a helpful check. And the problem now, though, is that it has become so wrapped up with the federal funding program, and more it's becoming political. And so what we're doing at Thales College is we're trying to see that where this is going, and we think that it's going to collapse eventually, and that people are going to say, you know what, it's just not worth it. And the best analogy that I've come up with to think of is sort of like paper currency. Accreditation, a diploma from an accredited university, is supposed to stand for real value. You're supposed to say, I have this diploma, and that means you can trust that I have certain skills or certain formation that makes me employable or what have you. But it's really only worth what people believe it's worth. And so it's in that same way, it's just like paper currency, as opposed to gold, right? If you see gold, you think there's real value there. I can see it. I don't need a certificate that says it's worth something. I can see the value right there. So at Thales College, what we're trying to do is say, look, we're just going to produce students that have real skills, that are formed in such a way that they're ready for employment, they're ready for starting out as an adult life. And we think that will be evident right on the surface, like gold. And employers and the rest of society will recognize that, and they won't need an accreditation, a diploma from an accredited school to believe that. So at the same time that we see faith in an accredited schools going down,
Mhm.
we think that we can take advantage of that and go in a different direction and really make a name for ourselves.
And you're not ashamed or embarrassed of that fact, because you have already put together for the parents. There's it's your policy, I suppose, written out on how you would need to approach, say, a master's level consideration if you're not an accredited college. And so parents can go there and they can actually see what the accreditation for like the business world doesn't prohibit a student coming from a non-accredited university to.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It does present certain challenges because of how dependent and how pervasive the rest of society is on the whole accrediting system.
Right.
But we have been, as you said, thinking through all that and figuring out how we can help students. Our model is really to help students come into our college, graduate in 3 years. We go all year round, so students can graduate in an efficient time. If you think about summers, some students take advantage of their summers when they're in a standard 4-year college, and they intern, or they get experiences that will help them. But for a lot of students, they go home and they work jobs that they don't really advance their career in any way. Some of them take out year-long apartment leases, and they will lose 3 months of it. Just becomes a giant waste. It doesn't help students make good choices. So by choosing to go all year round, and with significant breaks in between, but still going all year round, students are able to finish in 3 years. That helps them get a start on their career right away. One of the other things that we're trying to help push back against and correct is this thinking that has kind of become pervasive now, that you have to go to graduate school. The idea that you go to college now is sort of common sense. It's the new high school. You don't have a complete life until you've gone to college. Well, now it's graduate school, and what's after that, and that means people aren't finishing school until their 30s and starting their families really, really late in life. We just think that's kind of crazy. So we're trying to help students get the tools that they need to get into their careers, to start their families, and to still be in their 20s when they do that. Right. So we've done a lot of thinking on how we can help students, but we know that some students will want to go to graduate school after they go to Thales College, and we want to help them do that as best we can. So yeah, we do have plans for that, and that is all in our on our website that people can read about.
That's great. And we get a lot of families that are like, well, we love the liberal arts, and the liberal arts are great. We know that it forms our students so beautifully. We know that it grounds them, that they need to be grounded, and that truth, goodness, and beauty, those things ground us, as children, as young adults, and as adults. So what is your response to families that are concerned about their young person going in for a liberal arts degree? They might get some kickback
Hmm.
from other family members, say, well, what is that? What is a liberal arts degree? What do you do with that? So what is your
Yeah,
response?
right. Yeah, no, it's a great question, because the liberal arts, uh, not only are they not, they're very often misunderstood. The people who do even understand them often don't have don't have a lot of confidence in their goodness or their purpose. So yeah, what's the idea there? I think it's helpful to draw another distinction between. This is something that Aristotle brings up in his book on the politics, and it's a distinction between mere life and the good life. And there are things that we have to do, of course, to sustain mere life. That's just to keep our bodies functioning, to put food on the table. We have to do what we have to do to be able to provide for that. But that's not the purpose for living. That's not why we exist. We exist to thrive, to enjoy all of the things that God has provided in this life. We don't just eat oatmeal every day. We want to be able to have some creme brulee or something from time to time. And so I think it's helpful to recognize the distinction between mere life and good life, and that comes into play with regard to liberal arts degree or a professional degree, because you might say a professional degree exists for the purpose of helping you supply the mere life, all the things you need to sustain your life. But the liberal arts are the study of the contemplation of the true and the good and the beautiful. what kind of a life is worth living where we're just staying alive? Of course, our lives are enriched and given purpose when we are invited into the contemplation of those higher things. And so I think if you're born in a country where you have enough money to be able to spend some time in leisure and contemplation of those higher things, that's a wonderful blessing. And in America, we've been blessed with so many decades of being able to do that. But I think that there's also a realization that I think people have now, that so we had mere life, we had the good life. I think it's helpful to think of what is real life. Real life is look, we have jobs that we do, and we want to be able to see the true and the good and the beautiful in the midst of even the most mundane things. And so what we're trying to do is to help students recognize the difference between these things, the things that we have to do that just sustain our lives, and the things that we do that are higher, and then see how they are connected. At Thales College, we want to help students, invite them into the questions that people have been asking since the dawn of time. That the questions that don't have complete solid answers about the purpose of life and what is happiness and human flourishing and all of those things. At the same time, we want to give them practical skills that they need in order to get jobs, in order to do life well. And then we want to show them how these things work together. The best way to describe that might be by my saying the Thales College mission statement, because I think we put a lot of thought into how this works. So the purpose of Thales College, the mission, is to give students the liberal arts and professional education that they need, to give them the wisdom that they have to thrive in life and work. And so we think that if you put together practical skills and knowing how to what Aristotle would call prudence, learning how to make good choices amidst shifting circumstances in life, you mix that with a deep understanding and appreciation for the true and the good and the beautiful, and you get a holistic wisdom. And we see that throughout Scripture. Even you see Solomon, who's this carpenter who knows real skills of how to build things and design things. But he's also one we see in Ecclesiastes. Of course, he's fully aware of how difficult the answers, or deep the questions are for human life, and he reflects a sort of holistic wisdom. And I think Thales of Miletus does that in a lot of ways too. So it's sort of appropriate that we would have that approach. But in essence, we don't think that you can separate these two things completely, a liberal arts education and a professional education, because real life and human life, in the same way that humans are above the animals and lower than the angels, we're this mix in between. That's sort of appropriate for this kind of education that we're trying to provide.
Well, I think that it brings up a really good point, and it seems with our society today, there's a lot of flux. There's a lot of shifting,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not given a whole lot of grounding for that shifting. When things are shifting, I think about, I lived in Florida for a long time. For all of you who are in Florida, you have the mangroves, right? And the mangroves, the way they're rooted in the sand, in soil that allows for a little bit of play, but they're rooted, right? They
Mm-hmm.
they know where their roots are. And so when things shift, they're still grounded, so that the liberal arts really ground us. But then you're offering also these, like you're saying, these real life, the engineering and those things that are the real life types of things. So when things shift, they know where their grounding is, but they have the tools to think on their feet and to know how to adjust to those things, because they have that foundation. So
Yeah, that's a beautiful metaphor. I like that.
I love that. So what are three things that you would possibly say to Scholé group families to prepare them to prepare their students for Thales?
Well, I think it's helpful for students to have a good idea when they come into Thales College of which professional degree track they want. And that requires some thinking. Obviously, in a way, if you have a real bent for numbers and mathematics, then the engineering track is going to be best for you. And the reason that we chose mechanical engineering is because it is one track that has a lot of different ways that it can be applied. And so if you think you want to go into engineering, or you want to do something with math, but you're not exactly sure, mechanical engineering would be a great path to take, because from there you can go in a lot of different directions. The entrepreneurial business one is also very, very broad. It gives you good skills for how to think about how to operate in a 21st century economy. I had a student reach out to me and said he was interested in film. And do we offer film at Thales College? And it just so happened that I was working at that time with the videographer at Thales College. And I asked him, I said, would it have helped you in your career to have studied film, to major in film? And he said, absolutely not. He said, what really helped, what the thing that gave him the tools for film was working in film, learning how to change the lighting and learning how to edit things, that sort of thing. Those were things that he picked up on the job. And so it turns out that the hardest part of film is not knowing how to point a camera as much as knowing how to make money with the film that you've made. So what we propose at Thales College is for a student to come take a course in entrepreneurial business, and then get an internship where you're able to practice videography and learn on the job those skills. Because to read them in a book is one kind of experience, of course, but it's very different when you're actually on the set and making your adjustments for lighting and that sort of a thing. So we think that this just is a common sense approach that I don't know why more people aren't doing it, but we're hoping that it takes off. So
it sounds like you have a cohort in a cohort system. You have the lecture, and then the mentorship with the professors, but then you also have the abstract and the practical, and then you have your abstract in class, but then your practical on an internship level as well.
Right, exactly.
So all like, cyclical.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my bio that I spent some years working in a woodworking cabinet shop in New York City, and I really enjoyed that. I did that after college because I wanted to learn a trade, and I was upset that I had graduated college and I didn't know how to do anything. So when I learned about Thales College, I thought this is exactly what I wish I'd had, because after college I tried to learn a trade. But it was interesting. I was working with a woman there who had gone to trade school and had studied carpentry or cabinet making from a book. And it was just astounding to me how much you can't pick up in a book. The way that it feels to push a piece of plywood on a table saw is something that you can only learn by doing it. And it's a dangerous thing. So you want to be guided by someone who knows what they're doing. It can show you how to do it and avoid this and that. But it involves a knack. It involves a touch, something that is not cerebral. So there are, of course, major benefits to being able to learn about something in a book and study it, but there's also limitations to that. So yeah, we're hoping to leverage the advantages of both.
That's great.
That's great. So what do you have coming up this summer and next year that you would like to share with Scholé families?
Yeah, so we're trying to start incrementally instead of just sort of blasting onto the stage full grown here. And so the first thing that we're offering is a week-long summer entrepreneurial institute that takes place from June 21st through the 25th of this year. It's for rising juniors and seniors in high school. It is a very affordable price. It's subsidized. We have an early price on the website, and then a early bird price, and then it goes up a little bit. But it's a chance to get a taste of what Thales College will be like, because we are going to do, part of the day is going to be spent reading great books and having discussions about the role of business, both in society and how it can benefit individuals, and looking at things like Adam Smith and some really classic texts. And then also hearing from real local entrepreneurs, everything from tycoons like Bob Luddy, who have a sort of an empire of business that he's built over many decades, to one-man shows, of just one guy who's got a business and trying to show students the variety that exists. And with the internet now, it is so amazing, all the different things that people can do to make money now. The market that is available to them is almost limitless. And so it allows for new ideas every day to be tried out. And we're hoping to get students who already have a sort of a curiosity for, maybe they have some idea already of what they want to do, and to sort of spark that their wonder in regard to business, and give them a taste of Thales College at the same time.
That's great. And tell us the name of that program again and where they can find it, those that are looking.
Yeah, we're calling it the Thales College Summer Institute, and they can find it right on our homepage at thalescollege.org. So that's the first thing that we're doing. And then starting in the fall, we're going to be offering dual enrollment courses for juniors and seniors in high school. It'll be once a week, and we're going to be offering a course in writing and rhetoric, and then another course in American history and Constitution. So those are two ways that students in high school can start to get involved with Thales College, and just sort of try it out, see if it's something that they're interested in.
That's fabulous. So the dual enrollment classes, is that just this summer? Do you have dates, rough dates for that, or is that something?
Right. No, that'll be the fall and spring school year.
Okay.
Yeah. And that there will be information that's coming out on that on the website. So if people want to follow us and continue to hear about the information as it comes available, the best way to do that is to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And then also there's an email update that people can find at the bottom of our website, our webpage. If they go down, they can put their email address in there. And we promise we won't bombard you with emails, but we will give you updates from time to time as far as what's going on at the college.
And you were slated for a fall of 22.
That's right. That's when we're going to be launching our degree programs. So that's when students can enter as freshmen in fall of 2022.
Perfect. Well, that is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again in the future as things go along. We'd love to talk
Yeah.
to you. Even just about the dual enrollment type the programs that y'all are doing, because I know that there's a lot of families that would be really interested in that as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for bringing me on. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you.
You may have a Scholé group of your own coming up shortly.
That's
correct?
right. That's right.
Well, thank you so very much. Any closing words that you want to share with anyone?
Nope. I just hope that we're the beginning of another revolution and change in higher education. It's been so encouraging seeing what the homeschool movement and the classical school movement has been able to accomplish in just the last 20 years. And it's the only thing really that gives me hope about higher education, is that there's a whole crop of students that are coming up that are hungry for something different than what is currently offered. So.
Yes, they definitely are. They are, at least ours, I can speak about ours. Ours are very enthusiastic and really love what they study. So we're thrilled. We're thankful and we're thrilled. So thank you so much for being here today.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
God bless.